The story begins on a remote stretch of beach on Long Island, New York called Gilgo Beach. This pristine shoreline along the Atlantic Ocean masked a dark secret. Between 2010 and 2011, the bodies of 14 victims were found dumped in the thick brush along the beach and nearby Ocean Parkway. Gilgo Beach became a burial ground for women with a tragic connection. They were all sex workers murdered by a ruthless serial killer. For over a decade, the Long Island serial killer has never been caught. Our grim tale starts on the night of May 1st, 2010, with the disappearance of 24-year-old Shannan Gilbert. Shannan worked as an escort and had arranged to meet a client at a gated community in Oak Beach, located on the eastern end of Gilgo Beach. Sometime after midnight, Shannan called 911 in a panic.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do to me?
Let's go back to Manhattan.
She was disoriented and screaming that someone was trying to kill her. Police responded quickly but found no trace of Shannan or any evidence of foul play. She had vanished into the night. 7 months went by without any sign of the missing woman. Then, in December 2010, Shannan's remains were discovered in a marsh not far from where she was last seen alive. The police ruled her death an accidental drowning, but Shannan's family disagreed. They insisted she was murdered, citing the strange 911 call and suspicious circumstances. Shannan's mysterious death marked the beginning of the gruesome Gilgo Beach murders. 3 months after Shannan's body was found, police made a ghastly discovery along a remote stretch of Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. The first of 11 victims was uncovered. Then, one by one, the body count grew. On March 29th, 2011, police found the remains of Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthelemy, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and Amber Costello. The women had all vanished within the last 2 years after advertising escort services on Craigslist and traveling to meet clients on Long Island. Megan Waterman, age 22, had come from Maine after an arranged escort date in 2010. The petite brunette was never seen again. Melissa Barthelemy was 24, a Buffalo native who made ends meet through escort work when she moved to New York City. She disappeared in 2009 after telling her sister she had a Long Island outcall. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 25, hailed from Norwich, Connecticut. The tall, chestnut-haired woman went missing in 2007 during a trip to New York. Amber Costello, 27, was the final victim among the initial 4. The North Babylon resident struggled with abuse and addiction. She vanished after arranging to meet a client near Gilgo Beach. The discovery of 4 murdered sex workers buried in the brush meant the police were likely dealing with a serial killer, and there could be more victims yet to be found. That grim fear became reality over the next few weeks. In April and May 2011, police kept uncovering more sets of remains along the isolated Ocean Parkway corridor. On April 4th, Jessica Taylor and an unnamed Jane Doe were located. Jessica was just 20 years old, a DC escort last seen in 2003 after visiting New York City. The unidentified Jane Doe was also a petite young woman, between 18 and 35 years old. A week later, on April 11th, 3 more bodies were uncovered about a mile from the original burial site. The victims labeled Jane Doe number 6, Jane Doe number 7, and Jane Doe number 8. In total, 10 victims were found strewn along the remote beachfront. The women were all petite, in their 20s to 30s, and believed to be sex workers linked to online escort ads. The killer clearly had a type. The women's bodies were unraveled from burlap sacks, showing the callous nature of their disposal. The cold-blooded killer had hunted down these vulnerable women, strangled them, and then tossed them out like trash along the desolate parkway. The identities of Jessica Taylor and Jane Doe number 11 were later established, but the other 6 Jane Does have never been identified. Their families left wondering what happened to their lost girls. Shannan Gilbert, the first known victim, was also found dead near Gilgo Beach in December 2010. Although her death was not ruled a homicide, many believe the 24-year-old's murder was the start of the serial killer's sadistic spree. In May 2011, authorities revealed they were looking for a serial killer responsible for all 10 bodies discarded along Ocean Parkway. The victims were linked together through geographic profiling and DNA evidence. The Long Island serial killer proved to be both ruthless and elusive. For over a decade, the vicious murderer has avoided capture and identification. Behind the picturesque facade of quiet beach towns, a monster was hiding. The discovery of 11 bodies, 10 strewn along Gilgo Beach and Shannan Gilbert nearby, unleashed fear across Long Island. The unidentified killer remained loose and posed a terrifying threat. Many of the victims' families criticized the police, believing cops dismissed the women as disposable due to their involvement in sex work. The victims existed on the fringes of society, and some feel that slowed the search for their killer. But the callous murders ripped apart 11 families, leaving them grieving for lost sisters, daughters, and friends. Behind the police tape and case numbers were real women who were loved. Maureen, Melissa, Megan, Amber, and the other unnamed victims had dreams, talents, and families who adored them. Their lives were cruelly cut short by a merciless killer who has never faced justice. His identity remains a haunting mystery. For the victims' loved ones, the questions linger. Where did the killer encounter these women? Why were they targeted? How did a serial killer claim so many lives undiscovered and unsuspected? What evil lurks in the man who snuffed out 11 souls? The lost girls of Gilgo Beach believed they were heading to safety, routine appointments set up through Craigslist. Instead, they met a cruel fate at the hands of a merciless killer who viewed them as disposable. For over a decade, the Long Island serial killer has avoided capture and punishment, but the families of the 11 victims refuse to let their loved ones be forgotten. Their fight for justice continues. Who do you think did these gruesome crimes and why? Get your detective hats on, because if you nail the answer, you could be the lucky one winning a gift card in our special raffle. Stay tuned for part 2 of this gripping documentary where we reveal how police finally caught the killer and uncover his twisted motive for the murders. Subscribe to Crime Matrix to be eligible for a raffle and win a gift card.